We have sort of a problem here. Yeah, you apparently didn't put one of the new cover sheets on your TPS reports.
My experience is that most people want to talk about only one thing. Meaning. Or the opposite, which is the big problem, bullshit jobs. Have you ever heard of that concept? Okay, let me tell you that story then. It all starts with this guy. Anyone know who this is? John Maynard Keynes, like one of the great British economists from the 20th century. And he said, well, if we don't make too many big mistakes, like no more world wars and no more, austerity during recessions, then we'll be about 4 to 8 times as rich. He said, we'll probably use all that wealth and all that money to have a bit more leisure every single year. So the work week will start shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And back then, when he wrote this essay, the work week was about 50 or 60 hours long on average. And he said, well, if trends just continue, then we'll have this 15-hour work week in 2030. I know this sounds pretty crazy, but actually up until the 1970s, almost all the economists, almost all the sociologists, philosophers, they all believed that we would be working less and less and less, and that the great challenge of the future was going to be boredom. What are we going to do when the robots have taken all our jobs? That was the big question that people asked themselves. And the question for us now is, what has gone wrong?
Our work in society is deeply dysfunctional. And notice that work takes up a large chunk of your time. In fact, for most people, it'll take up over 50% of all their waking time in their life will be devoted to work. But the kind of work you'll be doing is not going to be the kind of work that you're passionate about or that you find meaningful at all or that contributes in a positive way to mankind.
All these people sitting in the office all day, sending emails to people they don't like, writing reports no one's ever going to read, browsing Facebook. I mean, this can go on for a very long time. Nowadays, it's maybe 30, 40%, but when the robots come and they'll take all our jobs, it could be like 50 or 60% in the future, or 100%. We could be living in some kind of society where we'll all just pretend to work and all pretend to be useful, while in reality we're just on Instagram.
And so you get stuck. You get stuck being someone else's puppet, doing unconscious work for them, spending your entire life, the majority of your life, doing unconscious work. You certainly aren't tapping into your greatest capacity as a human being, your creative genius. You're not using your creative genius almost at all.
This is a pretty big question, I think, that it sort of shows us that we have to completely rethink nowadays what work even is.
I mean, a very pernicious thing that's widespread throughout our society. I mean doing meaningless work just to pay the bills. Going to a grinding 9-to-5 job that you don't really value. Having an impact on the world, you don't know what it is or why you're doing it, but you're doing it because you have to do it, because you got to feed yourself, feed your family, pay the bills, keep the electricity running. And that's how you basically go through life. 90% of people are not tapping into nearly what they could be, what they could really contribute to the world. Visionary scientists, and they could be visionary inventors, and they can be people who could help the world lift everybody up.
Plus, we are facing a future where basically there just won't be enough jobs for the people populating the planet, right? Isn't that another basic argument that, you're going to be sitting around basically? What do you don't have income?
Well, here's maybe the most important takeaway of what I'm trying to say today, is let's never underestimate capitalism's extraordinary ability to come up with new bullshit jobs. So.
This is you.
What do you mean this is me? I was told I had a supervisor position.
You gotta spend 6 months in the trenches before you can interview for supervisor.
But I have a PhD, surely...
Look, you want the job or not?
Look. Yeah.
Great!